Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well. Welcome back to tonight's bonus. Tonight I have some very horrifying Dogman encounters. I also have video evidence of a portal in upstate New York. Blew my mind. A subscriber shared this with me earlier today. And I've actually known this subscriber for, 20 something years. And she sent it to me today and I was blown away when I saw it. So thank you. I think you guys are going to be blown away too, because it's news covered, and it's very strange. But before we get into all that, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's bonus, shall we? Today's first encounter. Huge dog-like creature protected me from something worse. When I was in residency, I lived near the hospital, so I walked back and forth for my shifts. One night I got out very late, around 2 in the morning, and was walking home the way I usually did. This was in the middle of a big-ish city, urban area, although pretty deserted for being so late on a weekend in the winter, so no people or cars were around. That in itself was a bit unusual, as usually there was some traffic, even that time of night. The air felt too still. I looked up, and blocking my path some ways ahead was a giant dark dog. Giant, like a Great Dane sized or bigger, but different shape, unlike a dog I had ever seen before. It peered at me, and as I started to walk toward it, it snarled. I stopped and slowly backed up, and it stopped and just stood there. I started to walk around it with a much wider berth, and it snarled again. It wouldn't let me proceed in that direction at all. Very creeped out, I started to walk back to the hospital and turned around to find the dog gone. There wasn't anywhere it could have gone that quickly. Shaken, I returned to the hospital and explained the situation to the police officer there who drove me home. The dog was gone, and I never saw it again. As scared of the dog as I was, I had an uncanny and very clear feeling that it was protecting me from something horrific by not letting me go in that direction, alone and very late at night. I had never written this story down before, but I can't stop thinking about it, despite it being about 5 years ago. Anyone ever heard of anything like this? Now, a lot of people are probably going to hear this encounter and say Cadejo, which I immediately did as well. But upon some further research, I came across something called the Guardian Black Dogs. Guardian Black Dogs refer to those relatively rare black dogs that are neither omens of death nor cause of it. Instead, they guide lost travelers and protect them from danger. Stories of this type become more widespread starting around the early 1900s. In different versions of one popular tale, a man was journeying along a lonely forest road at night when a large black dog appeared at his side and remained there until the man left the forest. On his return journey through the wood, the dog reappeared and did the same as before. Years later, 2 convicted prisoners told the chaplain that they would have robbed and murdered the wayfarer in the forest that night, but were intimidated by the presence of a black dog. So I do feel like you were right. This creature or omen was protecting you. I really don't think Kadeho, I don't think Dogman, I don't think anything except what I just read. But wow, what an interesting tale. What do you guys have to say about it? I reached out to this person and asked if I could narrate this on my channel and said my comment section is usually on fire with answers or suggestions that I have really great subscribers who have some great ideas. So, today's second encounter. A few years ago, I used to have to do a long drive from northern Illinois down to western Kentucky about twice a month. I'd gotten to the point where I knew the drive like the back of my hand. Sometime it was actually a lot better to make the drive early evening and do a bulk of the drive through the night, getting me there about 1:30 or 2 in the morning. No traffic, and in the summer it was relaxing to drive with all the windows down. After crossing into Kentucky, there was about 2 hours of road without even highway lights. But like I said, I'd done this so many times before. One of my last trips, I had been heading down that stretch, and I had my brights on. In the distance, my driver's side of the shoulder, I could see what I thought was a deer. Got a little closer and realized it was a wolf. Now I'm coming up on this, and it's on all fours, but its back had to be almost level with the roof of my sedan. I thought, holy fuck, that thing's huge. Now I'm doing probably 80, and I swear we lock eyes. I can feel him looking directly at me, and I'm getting closer and closer. Now I can actually see his teeth. I couldn't believe what I was seeing was an actual animal. Then, as I'm probably 50 feet from this thing, about to pass it on the driver's side shoulder, it stood up on 2 legs, staring directly into my eyes. I passed, and the rest of the drive I tried to figure out what I had seen, or should I loop back? I never told anyone about this story because most people would say, "Oh, it was late, your mind was just messing with you." But still to this day, I won't forget how long that stare down was. I can't help but think I didn't catch him by surprise, more like he wanted me to see him, and if he really wanted me to stop, he could have had me stop. Today's third encounter. This happened on a camping trip to northern Utah. We had just gotten to our campsite around 4 in the afternoon. My friend had to go to the bathroom, so she walked up a little into the woods by another campsite that was empty. As she walked up, I saw her stop for a minute and was looking around. I asked if she wanted me to go with her. We were both girls, and she said that she was fine, went to the bathroom, and came back. Later that night, we were sitting around the fire with 2 of our other friends, and she seemed kind of on edge. And I started to poke fun at her, as that's how we joke with each other, and she told me she had seen something just past the tree line as she was walking up to go to the bathroom. She described it as having pale skin. The face looked like a mix of a human and canine, and black eyes. It was hunched over on all 4s, and its back legs looked distorted. And she said that she could tell it would be tall if it had stood up on its hind legs. She could see a spine protruding from its back, while telling her sister what she had told me, she also said that while she was up there, it had walked directly in front of her, stopped and stared at her, so she just cleaned back to the campsite. Her sister says it was most likely a hairless bear or a coyote, although bears aren't super common up here, or a wolf with mange. I personally don't know what to think. If anyone could shed some light on this. Today's fourth encounter is the last encounter that Victor had shared with me that he went on while still in the agency, the Santa Cruz mission. Apparently, I don't have this written down. I'm just going by what he said and what I remember. He had gotten notification that there was either 2 or 3 deaths in the Santa Cruz area. He then choppered out there, was expecting to deal with a dogman or werewolf, but more than likely a dogman. He goes and sees the bodies. The wounds that were inflicted on the bodies were not consistent of what he knew of dogman and werewolf attacks. Very unusual. Slashes. Now, at this point, he's out in the woods. He's now trying to track whatever this thing was. He catches sight of a humanoid figure about 7 feet tall, slender, with kind of a pinkish gray color, almost like a shark. And it's running through the woods. I can't recall if he does take a shot at it or not. I want to say he didn't. But he said the forearms, whatever the forearms were, it had some sort of like fin or something that was like razor sharp. And like I said, I'm just going off memory. I wish I had written this down. But then he kind of loses sight of it for a few seconds or almost a minute. And then he catches sight, and it's wicked far ahead of him by then. The thing is super fast, super agile, and it jumps into the ocean and disappears. So he shares this with me, and I'm like, well, what do you think it was, you know? And I started coming up with ideas, like, do you think it's a reptilian? Because ironically enough, we had been discussing the political reptilians and that stuff that I think it was the night before or something. And I said, well, what if it was a mermaid or a merman, excuse me? And he said it could have been either. He doesn't know. And, you know, in his southern accent, you know, that's how he was saying. He's just, I don't know what this thing is, Jeff. I've never seen anything like this in all of my years with the agency. So then I shared a story very similar with him about a subscriber who had sent me an encounter about a year ago, and a friend of mine who lives out in Washington State, pretty close to Seattle. But he said that when he was in his early teens, he was like out in some woods behind like a garage or something, and he heard this rustling, you know, with the wood or tin or whatever the hell was behind this garage or shack, and he sees this creature, this humanoid creature, just stand up, and It wasn't after him, it saw him, they made eye contact, and it took off very quickly and jumped into the water and escaped. A couple things that were similar, were the way it moved, the way it was drawn to water. Just very, very cool. So I wanted to share this, kind of to hide it, because as I'm narrating these encounters, I'm having some crazy stuff coming at me via email and phone. So anyway, on to the next encounter. Today's fifth encounter. I was at my friend's house. He lives around a lot of woods in a small town in North Carolina. It was around 2 in the morning. Me and my friend were just hopping off of MW2 when we needed to put his dogs up for the night. So we walked them to put them up. But we couldn't find the cat, and we didn't want the dogs getting a hold of the cat. So we looked around the house until we finally found him on the front porch. So we put him inside and walked out to go back to my friend's house. My friend basically has 2 houses, so we stepped out onto the back deck. When we hear a cat about 50 yards away in the woods screeching like it's being attacked. So we assume it's his other cat, so we call his dad. He's a veteran in the Marines, basically meaning he's seen some shit. So he comes out on Marine mode with his AR-15 and flashlight scanning the woods. When we hear a kind of like hissing, but not a hissing noise, it's almost like something big is out there breathing. We got real quiet and listened to it, just keep making a blowing noise. But then we noticed it was to the right of us. 1 second, and the next, it was right in front of us without making any noise. As anyone would be, my friend's dad was in shock from what was going on, and fired off 4 rounds into the woods. It got quiet. But then seconds later the noise resumed, but it was moving all over the woods and making no noise at all. Eventually my friend's dad decided to push up to the wood line with a gun and flashlight in hand. The thing came right in front of him. He described it as being around eye level with him. He's around 6 foot. But what really bothered me is that it wasn't afraid of gunshots or people. Eventually, after not ever being able to see it, we gave up and called it a night around 3 in the morning. The cat didn't come out at all. We began walking back to his house when we heard it come from about 30 feet to our right. So we rushed at it to find it, nothing at all. Me and my friend and his dad go inside, talking about how crazy the situation was. Me and my friend started doing research, but couldn't find any type of animal that made that noise. It just messes with our head that an animal or creature has the balls to stand its ground while people are surrounding it and shooting at it. Just made no sense, and it still doesn't. It's the next night now. 12:45, my friend and I bought some chicken and placed it on the wood line. We're sitting outside right now waiting with a spotlight for something. Whatever it is, we want it gone. It just terrorizes the pets he owns. Today's 6th and final encounter. A little background on me and that day. I work in real estate, more exactly commercial real estate. So my work takes me all over the place, from urban industrial areas to very off the beaten path, secluded areas, farmlands, development lands, etc. On this day in particular, in October of 2012, my last assignment of the day was to go out and survey an old farmstead near Cayuga in Haldimand County, about 30 miles south of Hamilton, Ontario. The place had been vacant since the 90s. I arrived in late afternoon, I'd say around 5:30-ish. The place was the last one on a dead-end country road, and couldn't be seen from the road. I went up the long driveway and proceeded to do my look-over of the place. There were 3 structures: the house, a garage, and a large tool shed. I walked around the front of the house, which was completely boarded up with no means of seeing inside. I proceeded around the far side, toward the other buildings. The shed was basically fallen completely down, but the garage was mostly still completely up. I noticed around the side man door a lot of huge scratches, and the door was half broken down, but still held by a padlock on one side, and the middle and upper hinge. The bottom part was forced inward, and the door and clapboards around it were covered with these scratches. But not like scratches a dog would leave. These scratches were huge and parallel, but spread apart, almost like fingernail scratches, and very deep, obviously put there with some pressure. That's when I looked down and saw huge paw prints, but not regular round paw prints, almost elongated to a little bit. The area around this partially broken down door was covered with these paw prints. If I had to venture a guess at how wide they were, I would say at least 5 inches. I was wearing heeled dress boots, and when I put my foot over the paw print, I could see my print on either side. My foot, I wear about a size 10. So I don't have tiny feet by any means. I began to get very uneasy, and that's when I recalled noticing that all the sounds in the forest were gone. It was dead silent, and that was when I noticed the stench, like wet dog, urine, and feces. I mean, the whole area just smelled rotten, like a swamp, rotten decay. But this smell was strong and very putrid. I got very uneasy, like all of a sudden I knew I wasn't alone, and decided I'd seen enough and quickly headed back to my car. That is when I heard something in the bushes that sounded big. It was going through the trees very quickly and hard. I got back to my car. I got in and locked the doors. When I started my car and turned the lights on, that's when I caught eyeshine in the trees ahead of me. But the eyeshine was not at the level of a dog's head to be. It was a lot higher, I would say 4 to 5 feet up, maybe even a little bit higher. I couldn't make out a shape as it was getting on towards dusk, so there were a lot of shadows in the trees, but I thought I saw a large figure in the trees, but I couldn't be sure. I started to freak out a little bit and decided it was time to go, so I backed around right into the wet marshy spot and kind of got my car stuck. I was more interested in watching this thing than where I was going, which was a mistake. My attention quickly went back to the car as I tried to free myself from the mud. When I looked back to where this thing was, it was gone. The spot it was at, I could see further into the trees, so there was definitely something there, but I couldn't see exactly a shape, more so just a large shadowy figure. After several seconds of rocking my car back and forth, I managed to get it out and left very quickly. I don't think I have ever been so scared in my life. Like I said, I didn't clearly see it. What I did see was just left me with a feeling of intense fear and evil. Something bad was there. I returned to that spot about 1.5 years after this incident, and the place is gone. Someone bought the property and tore it down and cut down a lot of the trees, but to the best of my knowledge, nothing has been developed there. It's still just vacant land. I've not really told anyone about this, as I don't want to be ridiculed or made fun of. A coworker said it was probably a bear, but I know for a fact there are no bears this far south in Ontario unless it was from a zoo. I had long forgotten about this till I recently saw a video on YouTube about someone's encounter with something very similar to what I described. I handled the sale of some farmland on the nearby to the place I experienced the Six Nations Indian Reservation, and the client was one of the few remaining pure-blood Indians. I'd put him easily in his 80s, if not older. I asked him about odd happenings in the area, like strange animals in the area, and sort of told him of my experience, not in detail, just that I was on that property. He responded with a question. You saw it, didn't you? He went on to say there are many things that are unknown to this world, but wouldn't comment further about my experience, only said there is a good reason that particular place has sat empty and unused for decades. I had an odd nightmare of that day for about a year afterwards, and I'm still very hesitant to do surveys in that area.
A man with no ID and no transportation get from upstate New York to Northern California. It's more than 4,500 kilometers as the crow flies. But that is the mystery officials are trying to solve after a missing Toronto firefighter turned up in Sacramento 6 days after disappearing while skiing near Lake Placid.
That's the strange case of Danny Philippitis, the firefighter who was skiing in upstate New York, goes missing, and then 6 days later is found in Sacramento, California, still wearing his snow gear. I'll get more into his story towards the end of the video, but first to break down how this could happen, similar stories, and tying it together with missing people in national parks, and the theory that it's linked to portals. Now, whether these portals are created in the supernatural realm or in the scientific realm, that's what we'll look at first. First, in the supernatural realm, I want to bring up two Bible passages, and these talk about somebody being taken from the earth and as well as an opening to a realm that we currently don't see. So in 2 Corinthians 12:2, Paul says, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of the body, I don't know, but God knows. And in Revelation chapter 9, we have the angel in the last days comes from heaven with the key to the bottomless pit, opens this pit, and then great smoke comes out of it, as well as entities that were trapped inside of it. So there are two supernatural cases. I'll get into a few more at the end, but there's actually plenty of testimonies of people encountering these strange things in the woods, really, in the middle of nowhere. These phenomenons where they come across a blob or they see this like clear type of figure or something.
All right, folks. So, some very horrifying encounters, some very fascinating encounters, and a very fascinating and horrifying video evidence, or what I believe is evidence, of a portal in upstate New York. Like I said, an hour and 20 minutes north of my house. Tom Mezik's 45 minutes north of my house. That's 35 minutes difference between the two. Do these portals move from location to location? Quite possibly. We don't know. I'm sure some people are going to adamantly say yes because they know. How they know, I don't know. But chances are they do. I don't know for a fact, but I'm just guessing. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Could Tom Mezik have been caught in a portal? Wow. You know, I mean, yeah, there's the statement made about the metallic sound, this, and that. You know, my uncle was the undersheriff in this case, and I brought that up to him once about a portal. And he kind of looked at me like I had 6 heads. But he didn't look at me like I had 6 heads when I brought up Bigfoot, because he brought up Bigfoot to, you know, the big man of Missing 411. Well, he was in the movie there. But anyway, crazy encounters, crazy video. Unbelievable. I hope you guys enjoyed this bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I really did like this one a lot. Guys, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Keep an eye on your children, your pets, your family, and friends. Also, your support is what makes this channel so special and what keeps it growing and going. So thank you so much. I cannot express the gratitude. Guys, with that being said, God bless you all.